Hey everybody, this is Evan with Spawn Wave Media, and welcome to another edition of Esports Wave. First off, I'd like to point out that this was recorded on Wednesday, so even though it's going to be dropping on a Sunday, there might be some stories between now and then that I might miss, so sorry about that in advance. Looking back at these past 2 weeks, there hasn't really been a lot of major esports news. It's mostly been announcements for tournaments. There was the Esports Awards that was held on Twitch. So other than those things, there's really not a lot to talk about, so let me see what I can go over with you guys. Let's take a look at that Esports Awards ceremony. It was shown on Twitch. I actually got to sit through most of the whole thing. There was some problems with the actual streaming itself, but it was an interesting event. In most gaming, as probably a lot of you know, any kind of award ceremony is taken with a grain of salt. There's a sort of sense that it's kind of like corporate run. Maybe the voting doesn't matter as much. The judges are kind of biased in some situations. Maybe popular belief of what a game should win overrides the games that honestly should win due to their technical value in the industry. And I think, from what I watched, I think it's about the same still with the Esports Awards. A lot of it felt very, I guess, corporate driven. There was a lot of moments where people from, I think it was a mattress creation company, their owner came out with the announcers to actually announce the winners of several different of the major events. And it's kind of like watching the Schick Hydra bot come out and hand out an award to someone. It just feels really weird. Most of the night it was a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor, kind of poking fun at itself. Some of the presenters even pointed out that it was a little weird what was going on there. One of the clear moments I remember was Toby Wan, an announcer for Dota 2, came out and announced one of the awards. Right in the beginning said he would never win one. That was the closest he was ever going to get to one. I thought, that's kind of weird. I mean, he's a decent enough announcer. He had, you know, problems in his past, pretty serious memes that I don't think he's ever going to live down. But then almost immediately, I think 2 categories later, he was up for the award and like didn't win it. So it kind of felt like a real twist of the knife type thing. It was odd for him. Some of you know Dr. Disrespect from Twitch. He won Streamer of the Year, had a little heart-to-heart speech during that whole process. That was kind of interesting. But other than that, I mean, the whole event just felt kind of like, let's get everyone together and just get filled with alcohol and just talk about things. And almost none of it made sense. There was really no theme to the whole thing other than just handing awards out to people. It just felt really kind of thrown together last minute to a degree, even though it did have some decent qualities to it. But this was only their second attempt at this, so hopefully maybe in the future we'll be seeing a little bit better out of them. Well, time will tell, really. These past couple weeks didn't really see a lot of esports industry news. There was a kind of convention about the business side of it that talked a little bit about like where it needs to go in the future, but it was sort of just all kind of talk. We'll have to see, hopefully, if any of that stuff kind of comes to fruition, and I'll try to keep track of any companies really taking that into account. Until then, really, we had a couple tournaments finish. In particular, we had the Tekken World Cup finish on November 12th. I believe Qdans beat St. Fox for first place in that run, so congrats to him. But one of the more interesting announcements for an upcoming tournament is the Capcom Cup, because it's a little bit more than just an announcement of a Street Fighter tournament. It actually has a little more involvement with, I guess, the sort of DLC microtransaction-y aspect that these games take on. And I know some of you are probably like, ooh, cringe, why would we want to pay for more stuff for that game? I mean, yeah, granted, Street Fighter V hasn't exactly been at the forefront of anyone's mind in terms of a good fighting game. I mean, we got Dragon Ball FighterZ coming up so soon, so why would we care? But it is interesting to see Capcom try to latch onto this title and move into the mindset that a lot of companies who are already thriving in the esports industry have taken on. There's going to be 2 DLC packs released for the game in relation to this tournament. and they'll give you a bunch of new character skins, color schemes, as well as 2 new fighting stages and a couple titles, all based around the theme of this tournament. Now, that's interesting. I've seen Dota 2 do this a lot. I've seen League of Legends do this a lot, CSGO, and these are the games that continue to thrive and move forward because they utilize this type of social aspect to try to bring more money in to eventually be able to put on more big venue events. So it's interesting to see Capcom do this, and my hope is that it'll start to work for them a little bit. The problem is, of course, still that the game hasn't really latched on in the community's mind as much as the prior games have. But historically speaking in esports, what we probably will be seeing is a pickup with this type of system for Capcom, because the reality is the competition goes to where the money is. So even if Dragon Ball FighterZ is an amazing game, which I imagine it will be, if it's not supported, if there's not a big community around it that actually is able to build up these big prize pools and just these massive venue events where it's streamed everywhere and it gets massive coverage for all of these players, it's not going to take off. It's going to be a great game that everyone's going to play on the side, and we'll probably see maybe a second one, but it's going to be kind of in the background of the common esports events. If Capcom maintains this direction they're starting to head in, they could take off with it. If it works for them, especially this initial push to try to get people involved in the actual funding of these events through things that Capcom is going to give them, I mean, that's just a fantastic start at a self-sustaining system that would allow Capcom to focus more on this game. I know Marvel, we've seen the numbers. Marvel vs. Capcom is just not working. So, I mean, what did you expect? But Street Fighter at this point, I think it's their final attempt at maintaining something in the modern esports arena that could last and sort of give them a constant income that they don't really have to work super hard for, but they do need to make some attempts at. I mean, we've seen some of the patch notes for the upcoming Street Fighter V big patch recently, and there are tons of changes, new character abilities, new functional V-trigger skills. They're rebalancing the game in a massive way, which hopefully means they're listening. I mean, hopefully a lot of these changes are things people have been asking for quite a long time now. But we'll have to see. Time will really tell with this game, and I'll try to keep an eye on it, or at least the fervent fan nature that's going to hopefully be behind it during the process, to see if maybe it is something that this is its first stepping stone and it's moving forward. It's not just going to stay in one place. And a stagnating esports scene is kind of what I want to talk about to close this one out real quick. I've been asked for both videos, talk about the esports scene for Smash Brothers. It's important. We want to see it grow. We want to see people talk about it. And I get that. It does need to grow. Because one of the news stories I skipped, which I probably should have said something about it. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the tournament series known as Tipped Off. It started back in 2006. Came into a little bit of a struggle. It actually got skipped in 2016, and this year the actual founder of it, Michael Butcher, which I'm hoping is right, I probably got that wrong, he had to sell his house just to maintain that event. And the stories I was reading, it was kind of run like almost a victim piece, I guess. Not really a victim piece, but sort of like a feel sorry for this guy for having to do it. In any of the interviews he gave, he was always like, I wanted these events to be big, and I wanted to, anything I earned from them, I wanted to give back to the players, and that's great. That's a real good bout of altruism, but that's also how you don't grow a scene. That's how it stagnates. So it's become sort of that way with a lot of these smaller fighting game scenes, which is probably why I won't talk about as many as you might think. Just because they're all fan-run and they're not business-oriented. It's fun-oriented, and fun-oriented is great, but it doesn't last. So hopefully with Smash Brothers, I can bring you guys better news and better information as things go on. But from what I've been hearing about it, it's kind of been getting pushed into smaller and smaller venues. Most of the news and reports I've seen come out of it have been a little negative in relation. Like, even before this news came out, there was a story about Gonzalo Barrios, who when he went to a major tournament, he had to have a bodyguard on hand because of all the death threats he'd been receiving. Like, it's just kind of a weird, almost dark, I guess, community on the side that this is what we're hearing about it. We should probably hear better news, and I'm hopefully going to be talking to Player Essence a bit to maybe get my finger on the pulse of a little bit better stories going on in that. But in at least the major venues and the major news sites I've been constantly keeping up to date with, anything Smash Brothers related just sounds really bad. That about covers it. Again, fairly light on news this week. Hopefully the next 3 days won't see any major breaking stories, because I'll be eating turkey and then going to my dad's birthday. So I got a lot of stuff that's going to take a lot of time this whole rest of the week. If something pops up, maybe we'll do a mini episode, a little addition early on in the week, but we'll see. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time.